I think we're good to go. Welcome everybody. How are you doing this morning? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming to our panel, The Growing Geek Fashion Industry. I'm Lisa Granshaw. I'll be your moderator. And yeah, we're going to talk a little bit today about what it's like to run a geek fashion business. You know, the field has changed a lot the last couple of years. We're going to talk about how it's changed, you know, what you should do if you want to start your own business, and just get some advice from 3 experts here who have been doing it for a little while. And just so everyone knows too, we're recording the panel for anyone that can't make it, but just so you know, for Q&A, in case you don't want your voice on video or anything, you can talk to us afterwards. All right, so like I said, I'm Lisa Granshaw. I'm going to moderate, and I run GeekFold, which is, just in case no one knows, a geek fashion news company. Basically, it's the topic that we cover all the time, so if you're interested, you can check it out. And then, yeah, let's just kind of go down the line. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about what you make for your businesses, and kind of why you wanted to start your business.
Cool. I'm Ellis. I run Jordandené, which is a geek chic clothing, apparel, accessory brand. And we also started the Sartorial Geek, which is a community side of it. So it's a magazine podcast. So it's like the hangout next to the fashion part. I started the business because at the time there wasn't a ton of female or feminine, well-designed, well-made clothing, and I wanted to wear it. And like, we have more options now, but that was almost 7 years ago, so there was not nearly as much. And we're still going because we love it, but yeah, mostly the well-designed, well-made, feminine, comfortable fashion I felt like was lacking in the geeky space.
I am Anya Kaiser. I make Lucky 13 Lacquer, which is nail polish, top coat, lotion, and other pretty things. I started back in 2012 because I had an insatiable addiction for nail polish and needed to figure out a way to make it not just cost money. And so I used my love of sparklies to do something with it. And now I find myself inspired by media and things like that, and interpret it in my own personal way.
I feel like it needs to be a little closer. Hi, my name is Jen, and I am the mastermind behind Dancing Heron Illustration. I have always been into doing art. I used to do mock businesses growing up. I had like my little art shop thing set up in my bedroom when I was in 6th grade, pretending I was selling art to people. And then eventually talked to a friend, and we started selling art on the street when we were in grade school. So I guess it's kind of always been on my path. And I've been doing this job exploration thing for, about like since 2006. I initially went to school to get my degree in archaeology, and decided that I actually wanted to do a career in art. And so I ended up doing some stuff on the side, got a little half table at an anime convention, and found out that it's like, hey, this is great. People here are really awesome. I could actually do something here. So here I am today doing the thing I'm doing. I do illustration work, apparel with emphasis on androgynous, non-binary accessory and overall fashion. So.
And so, can you guys talk a little bit about taking that initial leap to starting your businesses? I think getting started can seem intimidating for a lot of people. So, you know, how did you guys do it? Did you get loans right away, hire help, just do it on your own?
I started it as a side project with I was working part-time as a nanny, and so I was doing that 20 hours a week, so I had like 20 plus hours to not do that, and I was trying to fill my time with something fun. So I didn't officially do it full-time until 3 years ago, so I had side money to fund when I needed it or to have money when this wasn't paying. So I luckily haven't had to take out loans or anything, but I've always had, or I had like other income at the same time, which I think it's a lot of work, but it can be really, really helpful and way less stressful than being like, well, if sales don't go well this month, I don't know how to pay rent. So that's the way I decided to do it, and it worked out for me really well.
I was actually unemployed at the time, and that's how my nail polish addiction started, because you can only play so many video games so many times. And so I had a little bit of savings that I had been using up, but I also did a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo at the time. This was 6 years ago, there weren't as many options. And some credit card purchases, things like that. A lot of help and support from friends. Talking to people about it before I decided to actually take the real leap and turn it into a business. Like, hey, so I'm thinking of doing this. Do you think this is an interesting idea? And talking to so many different people, it really solidified that it was a good idea for me personally at the time. And my first few dozen sales were all to my friends. But, you know, from there they talked about, you know, what they had on their nails and had word of mouth that then got it to more people, which has been very nice, actually. It's almost more valuable than purchasing an ad.
Yeah, word of mouth is like probably one of the biggest things that I've discovered doing my business, excuse me, that word of mouth has way more weight than anything else. It seems like there's a similar theme here going on where it's like we're like dickering with this a little bit. I too graduated college and I was working a job and I was doing art on the side and kind of exploring that. And I did a lot of research during that period of time and trying to figure out how to like make that jump because I did want to do it full time. And so I was like, oh, I probably should have a savings, I should be doing this, and when should I be doing that? And all while this was going on, I got laid off twice from 2 different jobs. And when that second layoff came around, it's like, well, do I waste my time looking for another job while I buy myself more time, or is this the time just to take the leap? And I went ahead and did that. And a lot of that I would have to say was I met a good friend of mine, which is like actually my best friend, at one of the cons, and we were both kind of starting at the same time, and so we decided to pull our resources together, and so we would share booths and tables and share hotel rooms and carpool, and I think that was like probably one of the key things that helped me kind of keep moving forward as well as for her to be moving forward. So.
Yeah, and so now you guys have been doing this for a while. Looking back and thinking about how you started out, is there anything now, as you reflect, that you wish you'd known in the beginning, or anything you would do differently based on what you know now with your experience?
Should we keep going in the same order?
It's up to you.
Okay.
Anyone
I don't mind.
jump in.
Tell me if anyone else wants to go first. The thing that I wish I had figured out like 4 years earlier is to find your community in both your peers and your customers, because I didn't really do that. So I was just sort of like putting something online, praying someone would buy it, and then once I realized there's a whole network of, I mean, there are nerdy business owners, there are fashion creators, there are small business owners, like there are so many pockets of people that are so helpful. I didn't have peers that I could ask advice from. I mean, they existed, I just didn't know they were out there. So having that instead of just random Google searches was like the biggest game changer. And then on the other side of that, finding an audience of customers to buy your stuff and not just like random luck, having people who you keep talking to, who are on your mailing list, who follow you places, and like actually building an audience and a customer base who keep coming back and you keep talking to. I didn't do either of those things for the first like 4-ish years of business, and I almost didn't really have a business then. Like it was just a hobby because it wasn't working yet. So finding that on both ends was like such a game changer, and the thing that actually let me be able to do it full time. So
it was more difficult to get in contact with your customer base, you know, 7+ years ago or whatever it may have been. Nowadays there's like Facebook groups and things like that. It's a lot easier in general to actually, talk to people, one-on-one, and that's what's kind of wonderful about the small business thing. I was most surprised at times by what people liked that I made. Sometimes I would make a thing and it's like, well, it's a lovely idea, I'm gonna add it to the collection, and I don't think it'll be a big seller, but wait, what? That's my most popular item? Okay, there's something about that people like. And again, making sure you stay in contact with your customer base, it helps, be able to keep track of what your customers want.
Yeah, that feedback is huge.
Yeah, so getting feedback from customers, friends, family. Honest feedback though, don't just go to people that are going to say, oh yeah, that's perfect. And be flexible, be willing to change if it's just not working for you.
I felt like I did a lot of things that I needed to do when I first started. I don't have any particular outstanding regrets. I'm sure there's things there, but the things that stood out to me that I'm glad I did and I still do to this day is research. Constantly be like checking in what's going on, how are people using social media, how should I be running my finances, what type of programs are going to be helpful for me, are there grants out there that's going to help me be able to like jumpstart my next line of product, what are people interested in, always kind of keeping one foot in the world of your customers but also having a good solid grounding and just solid business management. And then, yeah, having a solid, like, support, having a good, like, personal support group that will always tell you good things, but also having a good peer group that will help kind of keep you in check when maybe things get a little crazy and you're just like, I want to do this, but maybe I shouldn't.
That's a good point, too, is that sometimes it is good to have those people that will support you when you're like, I haven't gotten as many sales this week as I did last week. You know, what am I doing wrong? Well, sometimes you're not doing anything wrong. And that's an important thing to know as well. Just how business goes. Ebb and flow.
Yeah, and so then fast forwarding from that start to where you guys are today, you know, geek fashion, the industry has changed a lot. It's grown significantly. Like you mentioned, Jordan, there's a lot more choices now. And then I think, you know, in each of the areas, there's just a lot more companies starting and even mainstream companies trying to get involved in sometimes successful, sometimes not successful ways. I think we've seen various Star Wars cosmetics lines come out from places like CoverGirl and stuff trying to, like, you know, get into this. So from your experience, you know, being in the industry, how have you seen it change? What stood out to you maybe as the biggest thing? And, you know, what do you think of how it's evolved?
Okay, I'm going to jump on this one because I have two important things to say. I think I was talking with a friend about this earlier. I think the foundation to doing a lot of like merchandising stuff can be attributed to like Zazzle and like Cafe Press. Without that core, like that foundation, we wouldn't have like Printful. We wouldn't have a lot of these companies where basically you could do small minimum orders, where you can order 2 of one thing or 5 of a thing and not have to dump hundreds of dollars. Because that's like really hard for a small business to come up sometimes with that capital.
Minimum of 250 of something that's $10 a pop. Well, that's a little big when you're just trying out an idea.
Exactly, especially when you start talking about pieces that are like sublimation printing, all over printing, enamel pins even, embroidered patches, embroidered anything, honestly. So I think those are like the big things that have happened within the past 10 years for me that has made my business actually really more productive and being able to move forward.
I've been seeing some like pop-up boutiques coming up where a bunch of handmade people come together in one spot. There's actually one just a couple months ago in Seattle called the Indie Shop. And it was just an early afternoon and 8 or 10 different brands that you could just come in, buy a little bit of what you want from everybody, and come out with a big, beautiful bag. And having almost an in-person presence for otherwise online handmade things has been amazing. That's officially all I've got.
Yeah. I think the thing that I've noticed the most, which I already said, is just how much more there is. Like, I remember, you know, in college, like, I could maybe find a t-shirt that was a nerdy thing, maybe not even the thing I really wanted, but just sort of in the same vein. And now, like, you can really put together, like, head to toe, shoes, leggings, pants, shorts, skirts, dresses, shirts, cardigan. Like, there's every single aspect of fashion
and then
has a nerdy.
Accessories, like
jewelry
and nail
makeup,
polish and
everything.
Makeup, everything indeed.
It's awesome. And all levels of that, like, people on Etsy who make 2 of them, to things like CoverGirl and Maybelline doing huge lines, or Target. Like, I think there's every range of price and product out there. Not that they're all good, but they all exist at certain times. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, exactly. And so then with that change, how do you guys stay competitive in that field? I think that's something that is interesting because it's not just, you know, the geek fashion industry, but kind of as you pointed out, there's more places like social media has grown in a lot of different ways. So what are you guys doing? You know, have you had to adjust, or just how do you try to keep out there?
My favorite part is actually getting together with other artists and instead of being competitive, collaborating. One of the best things going on in the indie nail polish world right now is called Polish Pickup, where every month up to like 80 different brands make one unique polish inspired by a certain theme, and it helps us all benefit. Getting our name out there, getting to do a fun, short, temporary thing, and then also getting creative with like promotions and stuff is basically just be creative. Don't stick with the stuff that you think, you know, is safe. So you have to try new things at times.
Yeah, I like to think that one of my fun side hobbies is just people watching. I like to watch people, and conventions specifically are really good for that. Because like you get all the cosplay and all the just like flamboyance and the beautifulness of people's craft work, but also it kind of gives you a nice little finger on the pulse of what's kind of on people's minds when it comes to what they're excited about and what they're looking for. And I always use that as my cue of figuring out, okay, how does my brand fit into that? What is not being fully represented within that spectrum? And balancing between what people will buy and making a thing they never knew that they thought they wanted. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah. I think my answer is sort of similar, and it's a really good thing to do as a business anyway, but you kind of have to now. You have to find the thing that sets you apart. So like there are unlimited nerdy t-shirt companies, and like when I first started on Etsy, you honestly could make a nerdy t-shirt and you'd be one of the 10 people doing it, and you didn't have to think any further than that. And now you need a specific, like, I do this differently than anyone else, I do this, whether it's like you have great customer service, you have a certain color palette, you use eco-friendly things, whatever, you just need to have a thing that makes you stand out because just the product isn't as much of being enough anymore. But I think it's a great thing. I think that's a really good thing.
And I would like to emphasize and add to that, making yourself distinctive and having your client, your audience base support that and pass it around word of mouth and being all over social media. It's like, look at this really cool thing. I've never seen anyone else doing this thing, because then that helps you just continue moving forward.
Yeah, and I like how you guys touched on conventions and community, which I think is really important as well in this industry. And conventions have also grown a lot. And how important, I mean, it sounds like they're very important to your business, but how important is that? Do you guys try to budget in, I need to go to these certain cons a year? And then what is that community like? How have you seen that shift too over the years?
I'll start this
Go
off.
for it, yeah.
That's a loaded question. I'll just put it on there. And the thing that I'm always constantly having to reevaluate every year, because there's a point in my business where it's like, I have been seeing growth every year, and it's, oh, this is great, I'm meeting all of my goals, I'm growing, I'm building this thing, people are excited. And then somewhere between 2014 and 2015, that kind of peaked, and then it whoa. And I think there's probably some
You're
obvious
not the
reasons.
only person who does happen to.
And so I've been finding myself having to struggle every year and not being able to kind of predict anything.
And with so many conventions and boutiques and things available, it's hard to figure out which one should I go to. Like, there's two the same weekend on opposite sides of the country.
So yeah, and so you have to like balance between what can I afford and what can I make at that show. And so always constantly like analyzing that expense and that profit margin.
It's always a balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. There are two ways to do conventions, and sometimes they both happen, which is great, but there's are you making a profit, and are you making connections? And if you can do both, that's great, but I feel like they don't often always work out. Like, huge shows can be huge profits, and then also sometimes no one really texts you, and you just kind of like,
It's too much.
it's
People get
hard.
overwhelmed.
Yeah, but I think I have an online business only. I don't have like a brick and mortar store. So just being with people, like we've been talking about, getting feedback, like getting in-person feedback, watching people try things on, where you can see like, oh, this is too small for everyone, or like people love touching this and not that. Like those kinds of things are invaluable. And then also sometimes you make connections that aren't immediate money, but like you meet a person who then they feature you on their blog and you get a ton of online sales, or you do a collab, which ends up being your biggest line ever. So there are all these little things that are hard to like exactly factor out how they financially all work out, but
it's building that relationship.
Yeah.
Some relationships are immediate, you have immediate sale and they collect from you forever. And then you have others where you have to kind of nurture, they keep coming back to them, they keep coming around, and eventually they decide, I really love what you're doing right now and I want to throw $300 at you.
Right?
And
They
so-
like the things you do in general, but they wait for the thing that, oh, they
Yeah.
need that.
And if there was a thing that I was talked at one point, where it's like, a customer needs to touch an item 7 times before they buy it. Which is, don't take that literally, but there is a power to being able to interact with the item. For nail polish, being able to see the colors outside of a photo. Photos are great, cameras are amazing right now, but there's nothing more important than if you have a tactile nail polish, you can't touch this on a screen, but you can touch it in person, and then you can talk to that person and have them interact. It's like, it's this beautiful magical dance that we all do with our customers.
And in person, you can actually, you know, have a one-on-one with your customer that otherwise you can't. And if they come up, you can be like, well, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite TV show? You know, where should we start showing you these goodies that you might like most? Whereas otherwise, they just have to browse through your website. Which is frustrating. There has to be options, but not too many options, but not too few options. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you guys have touched on, you know, these various challenges that you faced with your businesses through the years. Now where we are with Geek Fashion, I'm curious, you know, is there a particular challenge or challenges that at this moment you find yourself facing just because of the industry or your own businesses? And where the geek fashion industry is right now, do you think the whole industry might be facing a particular challenge as it continues to grow?
Because I work with geeky media most often, it can be hard to explain my references for the names and whatnot. And sometimes I sound like a crazy person, depending on exactly what show or TV show or whatnot I've been inspired by. So that can be difficult. But again, just kind of making sure you get seen by the right people that are interested in what you're making. You know, go more to geek conventions and have geek spaces that you communicate with your customers in. And that can really help.
Yeah, I totally agree. Navigating the licensing world, I think, is the biggest challenge because sometimes, I mean, it's just challenging across the board. Like, pitching is hard, going through contracts is hard, deciding which venues to go and how inspired by you think is okay, and if you care and if you don't. Like, all of that is so complicated, and some brands are more and less willing to work with smaller designers, and so then you have to decide how you care about that, and if you want people to be able to make things that people love with or without technically all the right permissions. So I think that's like a huge thing that is not very figured out, and I don't know what the future of that will hold, but it's very complicated and very tricky and really messy a lot of times.
Potentially scary, just a
Yeah,
little.
yeah.
I think to touch on the intellectual properties thing, I think the biggest thing that a lot of artists are dealing with right now is dealing with companies swooping in and stealing properties and producing it themselves. And as a small business, you have a hard time fighting that. Unless you have money behind you with a strong lawyer, no one really responds to a cease and desist. I accidentally called it a DNR the other day, and I was like, that sounds really passive aggressive. But the laws around that are so weird and very protective of corporations, but not as individual artists. Yeah, and so I feel like there's a lot of room within the industry to help protect artists who put stuff online to promote their business, but it should not be taken as an invitation to steal to put on a cheap t-shirt website for production.
Because then you, on your own website, have to be careful with just how crisp of a picture you're providing to your customers.
Oh, the problem is it doesn't even matter. They will take like
low quality.
Yeah, and then throw it on a shirt, and because people, the community is so hungry for nerdy things, they'll buy that thing unknowingly.
But I have seen a whole lot of support from customers that they're like, I saw your art on a website that I know is not you.
Yes.
And so those are really good, getting numerous reports from people.
And I think the best advice with that, because I've had artist friends who have just talked to us like, there's nothing I can do. The thing that you can do as a fan, as an attendee or whatever, if you're seeing your favorite artist or an artist you recognize their work being represented by someone else without their consent, contact that company yourself and shoot them an email. Hey, I saw this. I know you don't have the rights for that. Please take that down.
Yeah.
It helps the artists a lot to be able to just have the outcry from the community say, no.
I myself have actually contacted an artist that I know I had seen their art on DeviantArt, and then I saw it elsewhere, like 2 years later, and so I was like, hey, I saw this online and I knew it was yours, and I just wanted to make sure that it was officially supposed to be there. And they were like, yes, it was a commission, but thank you so much, because my art's been stolen before, you know?
Yes.
Unfortunately, it happens.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question of the panel, and then we'll do Q&As if you have questions. Start thinking about that. But I want to look to the future a little bit of the industry. You know, looking at the changes we've seen and where it might go, you know, what has you guys excited about the potential for the future? And what do you want to see change or improve in the industry?
I mean, I'm excited that there's so much. Like, things that I never thought I would want or need exist now, which is very cool. Like, I mean, like I was saying, every aspect of fashion you can get a geeky twist on, and I think that's incredible. And that is expanding into like even more creative ways, and just scrolling Etsy and seeing the kinds of things that come out that are so cool. Like, they're so cool. So the fact that pop culture is expanding and like nerd culture is getting bigger, so there are even more properties that are really cool, and then those artists are working with their own merch. Like, everything is getting bigger and better, and I think that's very cool. And the fact that like I can put together an entire outfit and I can wear it out. I'm not like in full cosplay. Like, I can go out and live my life,
subtle.
and everything's a little nerdy. Yeah, it's the best. So I think that the fact that it is getting bigger and more opportunities for, I mean, the internet is helping too. Like, it's not easier, but there are more opportunities. Like, you don't have to be an in-house designer for like Target to be able to make one weird unisex shirt, and that's the only like Star Wars t-shirt that's coming out. There are so many other avenues that you can get involved in the industry, and I think that's like very exciting.
Yeah. I'm happy with how the state of the geek fashion industry is going right now. Basically because yes, now I can be geekified in more than just my nail polish and jewelry and stuff. You know, I can, as you were saying, as much geeky references as I want on me. And one of my favorite things is actually sometimes the subtlety of it.
Yeah.
For example, if it's makeup, you know, you're not seeing a Deathly Hallows on someone's shirt. You don't necessarily know the exact reference, but sometimes it can just be a quiet empowerment to yourself, which is really cool.
The thing that I've been really excited about watching and developing is a lot of like stuff that's geared towards femme plus-sized fans. Just seeing a lot of stuff it goes beyond just a t-shirt. We all love a good t-shirt. There's nothing wrong with that. I love a good t-shirt. But also, I want to be able to have pants that fit me. And I'm glad that that door and that precedence has been set. Because for me, as an artist and designer, I really want to be kind of pushing the envelope of what's considered androgynous. Because androgyny in fashion is usually set with a masculine lens. And so everything that's vaguely masculine ends up being the foundation for androgyny. And so I want to like try to push that further, and it's like, can we bring some of that feminine gaze into that and really build on that more and be able to have more representation on underrepresented sizes and shapes within the community.
And also, you know, artists from underrepresented, you know, groups can get their name out there. They can be on Etsy. They can have their own art, and even if they're just a little person there that they don't have a lot of exposure, sometimes even just having that representation, knowing that there's one person that really loved your thing, enough to spend money on it. And that's nice.
All right, does anyone have any questions for the panel?
Is there a place where geek fashion and sustainable fashion can or do intersect?
Yes. I would say from my experience with like t-shirt production, because there's a lot of other stuff that you can get into with like finding sustainable base products. So there's a lot of companies will offer, oh, this shirt was actually manufactured here in the United States versus China, and we use organic cotton or ethically sourced cotton. So there's options out there. The thing right now is a lot of it's cost prohibitive for a lot of us. For me, it's like, The price difference is enough for me to like not pursue that at the moment, but that's definitely, I'm hoping as that catches on and people become a little more aware and have more power to like dictate that market, you'll see more of that.
For me, sustainability is important, but also safety for the environment is a bigger concern since I've got nail polish, which is chemicals. And so what I try to do on that front is make sure I remain as many, toxin-free as I can. That's been big 5 toxin-free, 8 toxin-free, 10 toxin-free. Things that are in drugstore nail polish, but not the thing that I use, for example.